Welcome to the Alchemy for Authors podcast. I'm your host, Jo Buer. If you're an author, aspiring author, writer, or wordsmith, you're in the right place. Join me as I chat with authors and industry professionals and share my own experiences with using manifestation and mindset practices to supercharge our writing lives. We'll explore ways to overcome writer's block and imposter syndrome. We'll find motivation and inspiration to get our butts in the chair and our stories written. And most importantly, we'll embark on creating lives and livings doing what we love. If you've ever dreamed of a prolific, wealthy, happy or healthy author career or writing practice, then this show is for you. So let's dive into Alchemy for Authors. Hello, my friend. Welcome to episode 66 of Alchemy for Authors. As I'm recording this intro, it is the 4th of November, 2023. I hope November has been off to a great start for you, and if you're embarking on NaNoWriMo this year, I hope your words have been flowing. In my book news, my latest novel and first paranormal cozy mystery, Hades' Haunt, had a phenomenal Halloween. I invested in just a real basic bargain booksy promo, and to be honest, my life has been really too busy to invest any other money and very little time into advertising it. But wow, my sales really kicked butt, which was such a pleasant surprise. Hades' Haunt is only my third full-length novel, and it's been so much fun watching it be a nice little consistent seller for me since its launch back in July. And without any real effort on my part, which has been fantastic. And I'm not naive enough to think things will continue this way, but I am enjoying it all the same. Next year, I plan on kicking some proper marketing strategies into gear when I plan on releasing the second book in the Hades series and also a sequel to my gothic suspense novel, Unspoken Truths. Right now, most of my time and energy is actually going towards writing this sequel, which is going to be called Broken Lies. And I have a deadline this month to get it to my editor, and the date cannot be changed. Meeting this deadline is seriously the biggest challenge I've set for myself, I think, in my writing career to date. I am loving writing the book and am remarkably calm despite the fact it is not yet finished, let alone edited before I send it to my editor. There have just been so many other things competing for my time right now, so it's been a little bit tricky to steal time to work on this novel, and yet somehow I'm still remarkably calm about the whole thing. Some things that I think have been helping is actually just not allowing myself to overthink the story and the process too much, and just trusting that the story will reveal itself and come together. Kind of what I talked about in my last episode on how I go about writing a book in episode 65. So if you haven't checked that out, you can go listen to that. I've also been doing this cool little meditation for fast writing by H.L. Savino, whom also has this really cool new release book called Adventures with the Universe, which is all about manifestation, which I haven't yet fully dug into, but I am chomping at the bit to do so. I had some lovely listeners DM me this week about the last episode of Alchemy for Authors, thanking me for sharing my process and letting me know what resonated with them. So if you're listening to this, just know that I really, really do appreciate you reaching out, and it totally makes my day. So on to today's show. Today, I'm joined by crime fiction author Stephen Johnson, who coincidentally, when this goes to air on the 6th of November, will be celebrating his birthday. So happy birthday, Stephen. On this episode, we talk about why Stephen considers himself an accidental author, how the game Killer became the seed of an idea for his first novel, how Stephen's previous careers in journalism and the media impacted upon his stories, how he moved away from hating writing to passionately loving it, how Stephen finds inspiration from observing everyday life, why he believes that editors have mystical powers, why he's not afraid to change genres, and how he goes about publishing his books, and why Stephen's not afraid to tackle tough subjects despite imposter syndrome. So I had so much fun chatting with Stephen, and I hope you really enjoy our conversation that we share with you. So when you are ready, grab a drink, find a comfy chair, sit back, and enjoy the show. Hello, my lovelies. Welcome back to another episode of Alchemy for Authors. Today, I'm chatting with author Stephen Johnson. Stephen is a former journalist who writes crime and historical fiction in Auckland, New Zealand. His debut novel, Tugger's Mob, was inspired by 3 seasons as a tour guide in Europe and became a finalist in the 2020 Nio Marsh Awards for Best First Novel. His crime novel Boxed is set in the world of animal rights activism and the media. His historical novel, Peace Stick, goes behind the Iron Curtain during the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. And his new thriller, Kaikoura Rendezvous, is the 3rd in the Melbourne Spotlight Mystery Series. So welcome to the show, Stephen. It's so good to have you here today.
Thanks for letting me join you and your listeners, Jo. It's just always good to be talking about books at any time.
It is. And you've had quite an interesting journey to get to the point of writing books. So I would love if you could start just sharing a little bit about what brought you here to being an author.
I call myself the accidental author because I've been a journalist and television producer for my professional career. And I was a journalist who didn't like writing. I sort of fell into journalism because I couldn't do much else. Literally, I was lining up to become a school teacher, waiting to do training, and stumbled into writing cricket notes for a community newspaper. And I had done the journalism degree and decided, well, that's too much hard work for me. Deadlines, I hate that. And did the cricket notes, and then the teacher training didn't that was in the distance. They offered me a job. And I was broke. My brother was supporting me. He said, look, I'm sick of lending you beer money, take the job. So I became a journalist and ended up in television, where pictures told the story so much better than my writing, I always thought. And I worked in the news media and sports media in Australia and New Zealand for 40 years. And then had family, that sort of thing, and decided, well, when I was 61, I'm sick of this. I really want to change. Why wait until retirement to go off and do what we've always dreamed of doing? Going back to Europe, getting a motorhome, just travelling around and enjoying that. Because travel has always been a big passion of ours. I did a lot of travel in the 80s and worked as a tour guide and for 3 years, that sort of thing. So literally, I convinced my wife to sell the house, give up our jobs, and go to Europe and buy a 7-metre motorhome. And think, well, this was going to be great, because our daughters had left home. The nest was empty. There's nothing holding us down. I was due to retire in 2020. And I said, you don't know what's going to happen. So we took off in 2017. And as we were sort of preparing to go, an idea came to me for a story. And it went back to my days as a tour guide. I used to work for a company called Top Deck Travel. And they used to convert double-decker buses into campers in the 80s or 70s and 80s, and the company's still going now. But in those days, it was very much for budget Australian, New Zealand, South African travellers. You would have makeshift bunks upstairs, kitchen downstairs. They would do tours all the way from London to Kathmandu, mostly around Europe, Spain, Portugal, Morocco, that sort of thing. And I worked for them for 3 years, and that was fantastic. And we used to play a game to keep the passengers occupied at times called Killer, where you'd be in the campsite at night, all's very quiet, it was raining, whatever, and so you would nominate a killer for the bus for the night, and they had to blink or wink or catch everyone out and kill them, just as a part of the fun. So sometimes it got very real, would extend over several days. You'd be standing on the Eiffel Tower in Paris, and suddenly someone's on the ground frothing at the mouth, and all these passengers are laughing, and the French are saying, "Sacre bleu, poisoning, what's going on?" And it was just one of the passengers. No, I'm just dying. You've still got a killer amongst you. So I'd set this idea, well, what if one of the passengers took that for real and thought, oh, yes, and started killing passengers? And because I was free of work, we're waiting to go travel, waiting to go pick up our motorhome, And the idea just sort of germinated and just kept going and going. And I thought, well, the bus trip would be over within, a day. Police would come in, shut everything down. But I just thought, well, okay, what if something happened back in the 80s when I was the tour guide with Top Deck, but wasn't discovered until many years later? And so from that idea, as we were traveling around Europe in the motorhome, I just started writing. And we would stop in a campsite at night. We'd go have a swim, go to the bar, have a meal, whatever. And then I'd sit out there on the laptop and just let these thoughts flow. And I just got so excited and I loved it. And I thought, well, here's me who hates writing, does everything to avoid writing. And I was just frothing to put this story down. And it just went from there to become Tugger's Mob.
That's just so fascinating. So you had no real inclination to write a story up until that moment?
No, and that's it. A lot of journalists will say, that's it. When I retire, I'm going to write the great Australian or New Zealand novel. They think I've got that creative fiction in them. But I never did. No, if I could avoid writing, I would, because you would have a 3-minute news story and, compelling pictures would tell us so much better. And it's a different type of writing from what we do in novels and fiction, because the pictures, you had to write to the pictures. You didn't say the man walked across, picked up the stick, threw it, and the dog chased it. You had to find a way to be descriptive for that writing. But when I was writing Tugger's Mob, I found myself visualising all the scenes. And I drew very heavily on anecdotes from my travel days.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't plot the trip on one of the Top Deck buses. I thought, no, that's a bit unfair. But I plotted it in amongst, a lot of the people who did travel with us. In fact, the character of Tugger Tancred was inspired by one of my worst passengers, who was not as evil as I made Tugger out to be. And the story with Tugger's Mob is that a Waikato woman, Judy Williams, goes on a big OE in 1986, like all Kiwis do. And she goes on a bus trip. And in the 80s, there were no mobile phones to record photos and trip notes, that sort of thing. Everyone had a journal. And so Judy recorded all the events, sort of Paris, Rome, Istanbul, etc., all the exciting stuff. But it also recorded an escalating campaign of sexual harassment by Tugger and his cohorts who became known as Tugger's Mob, a drunken, boozy bunch. But at that time, Judy's sort of cries for help went unheeded. Everyone said, oh, no, we're here for a good time, not a long time. Don't worry, just get along. Because Tugger and the group were very sneaky about how they did it. No one saw any overt harassment. And so it escalates to the point of rape and murder. But no one understood that until 30 years later, when the diary is rediscovered. And that starts a campaign of revenge that the original perpetrators don't see coming. And so that's where I connected the past with the present. And the other point of difference with that is that because of my years in the media, I know the media better than I know police procedures. So I used a current affairs television crew as my sleuths. They stumble upon a couple of clues. They start tugging at them and things start to unravel. And suddenly bodies are literally falling at their feet. They're going to interview someone and they find the bus driver from the tour, with stabbed to death on his doorstep. So that's become the theme of that Melbourne Spotlight Mystery Series. Police are a peripheral part of it, but essentially my current affairs team are solving the crimes. And that was something I knew about, travel I knew about. The story is set in Europe. It's set in modern-day Australia and New Zealand. So all markets that I thought the book would appeal to and all areas that I know very well. And so the story came together. I'd literally be driving around Ireland in the motorhome and I pull out a little notebook from the side pocket of the car, hand it across to my wife and say, oh, quick, put this down. She didn't know that the characters were driving along with me in the back there. She said, oh, you've been a bit quiet for the last hour. I wonder what you were doing because your mind was just thinking about the plot. And while we were doing that one day, we were listening to a radio interview and it was talking about new authors. I said, oh, well, this could be me. Oh, this will be great. And the radio host asked the guest, I said, well, what can a new author expect to make per book? And they said, oh, probably £1. And my wife had the notebook in her hand at that point. She said, well, why shouldn't I throw this out the window? All this sort of time and energy you're putting into this, it's keeping me very quiet and very happy. Just take the notes down, please. But from that point, I thought, well, okay, I finished the story. I thought, what do I do? No idea, from that process, not really. I'd read Kindles, and I traveled with Kindle. We have 20 books on the Kindle, but I didn't know the processes from there. And luckily, I had a contact in the publishing business, and I said to her, I've got a novel. What do I do with it? She says, have you had it assessed? No. Okay, go get it assessed. Okay, did that, did some rewrites. Said, have you had it edited? No. Okay. So the back end of the trip was editing, and that was very different from the assessment. I thought, oh, the editor loved it. Said, this is great. Really, really enjoy this. A couple of things you need to change, correct. And then the first editor came through, and we were parked up in Scotland waiting to catch a morning ferry to go to Northern Ireland. And I thought, well, this will be a breeze. The rest of the story just flowed, and she loved the assessment, etc. And then I saw the red lines, the cross-outs, groundbreaking. I changed this, changed that, pulling my hair out. Oh, goodness me. So I just started pounding into the computer. I'm an old two-fingered typist because I started on Remingtons. So the whole motorhome was shaking. My wife was up the back saying, for goodness sake, it just doesn't have to be all done tonight. And then everything went black because we were freedom camping and the battery went flat on the computer. And I was, no. I've got to finish this because I want to correct it. I wanted to show her that, it was all the good story. So the next morning, first in line to catch the ferry, took the laptop, went up, plugged into the ferry, started pounding away. Next 2 hours, then I got a tap on the shoulder and Kath, my wife, said, are you coming to Northern Ireland? And literally that trip, I did not see it. I did not notice anything. And so from then on, it's the process that every writer goes through, getting the book through editing and getting it published. And Toga's Mob was published in 2019. So a long journey from 2017 writing to actual publication with a traditional publisher, Clandestine Press. But it was great. It was wonderful. And because of that, I said, look, I'm really enjoying this. I've found my mojo. I found I enjoy writing. I enjoy storytelling. And when we came back to New Zealand, we travelled again for another 6 months until the money ran out. And my wife decided one of us needs to go back to work to keep us alive. And so I said, well, I'll be the house husband, the domestic god. I'll keep things going and you sort of keep some food on the table and we'll take it from there.
That's just so fascinating. I am just so interested by the fact that the writing bug really hit you so late. Like you had no intention of being an author, but when it hits you, it seems like it really inspired you and was almost a bit of an addiction. Because once you start, and I know this myself, once you write one book, you can't help but be ready to write the next book. And so I'm guessing that's what happened to you because you're 3-4 books in now, are you?
I'm actually up to 6.
6. Oh my gosh. Okay, there we are.
Yeah. So the third book in the series, Kaikoura Rendezvous, is about to come out next month. By November.
Yeah.
I have the fourth book in that series, which I've done the first 2 drafts, and that will go off to the editor very soon. And I've written the start of an Auckland trilogy, which is a little bit controversial, the subject matter. It's a crime fiction book, but there is a sexual theme in it that causing a few pursed lips. But I wanted something different. I wanted, that little bit of controversy with it. I suppose it was a reflection after 5-6 years of writing, the growing confidence. There's still a certain amount of imposter syndrome, as we all experience everywhere throughout our career. But I thought, I want to stand out. I deliberately designed the books with the current affairs crew as a point of difference. And I said, this one can be, the Auckland-based one can be different as well. It's about a lawyer who's also a television presenter. She has 2 very high-profile careers, and she has a very secret private life that is threatened to be exposed. And what will she do to protect that public career, how far will she go? And it's a sort of thing that I live beside a park here in Auckland. I've watched hundreds of people go through there every day with their dogs, but you don't know the real people. You know,
Yes.
it's all of us, we're always observing, but we're looking for that detail, that interesting characteristic or something that we can blend into our stories, but you don't know what happens behind closed doors at home. And that's where the thought came from. And I just let my imagination go on that. And so that will become a self-publish after Christmas, I think. So, and I'm happy with that because I think it's one of my best books because it's brave enough to tackle the subject that people will say, oh, I didn't know that happened.
I love how you've talked about drawing from real life to inspire you with your stories and things like that. And I think, can't remember if it was in an email you sent or something like that, but that you had said that it was kind of surprising how often journalists and that can sometimes be the people that stumble on dead bodies or something like that. You'd said that you'd even had that experience yourself coming across a body quite close to where you were. And so it's something that happens and has inspired some of your writing and your story ideas. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yes, well, when I look back at it, I thought all the books come from real experience. So Tugger's Mob was based upon my travel days. The second book, Boxed, which deals with an animal activist with a vendetta at the greyhound racing industry in Australia, where people might recall in 2015, the issue of live baiting was exposed, that it was widespread throughout the industry. Trainers were tying possums and other animals to lures and blooding the dogs that way. I worked for the New Zealand Racing Board producing greyhound racing programs, so I had an inside perspective on that. And so while writing Tugger, the idea for Box came to me, and I thought, yeah, I've got to continue. That's the next one. The third book was actually the historic novel, Peace Stick, which literally came over a cup of coffee one morning, meeting a woman who grew up in East Germany. She's a friend of my sister-in-law who I'd met briefly, and I was, I'd love to talk to Ulrika about her life living in East Germany. And so we managed that one day in 2020. I'd just come back from Kaikoura, where I'd been researching the third book, and I was sort of in the middle of writing Box. So I had stories juggling at the time, but it was all so exciting. I got to that obsessive stage. If I'm not writing, I'm researching and balancing that. So I said to Ulrika, well, look, I have a boomer Western perspective on life behind the Iron Curtain. What was it really like? And she said, I had a wonderful life. I lived in Erfurt, which is in sort of central East Germany. I said, I didn't lack for anything. The only time I was ever worried because of our position behind the Iron Curtain was during 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis. And the teacher walked into class in the morning and said, World War III is going to start in a couple of hours. And my sister-in-law and I looked at it and I said, oh, wow, that's a heavy thing to drop on any student. And said, well, what did you do? How'd you cope with it? She said, well, my friends and I, we didn't want to die. We wanted to go play with our hula hoops, roller skate. I wanted to skate for East Germany in the Olympics, that sort of thing. I wanted to go walking in the Steigerwald. And Erfurt is a beautiful medieval town that was preserved pretty well during the Second World War. And so she and a friend went out to the playground at lunchtime and said, well, what can we do? We need hope for a future. I want to get a career. I want to have a family. I want to do what my mother and father did. They survived the Second World War, but we could be dead in a couple of hours. And they're literally looking to the skies to see if the Americans were about to rain nuclear bombs on them. So they found a stick in the playground, and Ulrika said, well, look, we can make this a lucky charm. And they put it in a hole in the school wall and said, if that stays there tomorrow, or still there by the time we come to school tomorrow, we've got another 24 hours to live. That Khrushchev and Kennedy have got another day to work out how to resolve this nuclear crisis, which all revolved around Russia sneaking nuclear missiles onto Cuba, close to the American coast. And so she said, we did that. And so my sister-in-law and I looked at each other and she said, Peace Stick. That's what it was. It was a peace stick. It became their symbol of hope. And, it just sort of captured us. And so the conversation went on from there. And I said, look, this is a fascinating story. It's captivating me as a writer. I don't have time to do anything now because of other stories, but I would love to come back to it. And I wasn't able to get back to it until 2021. And I knew the 60th anniversary was coming up in 2022. I thought, I want to release a book by that stage. So literally, we sat down and we just went through Ulrika's life, that week where the world was on the brink of a nuclear abyss. And she just detailed her life in Erfurt, the fear, the stress. She was a post-war baby. They suffered the guilt of the Nazis post-war. She said she never was able to relinquish that guilt until she moved to New Zealand in 1989. They used to do concentration camp visits as part of their compulsory school curriculum. The gas ovens were made a couple of blocks away from where she lived. So it's sort of life.
Heavy, eh? Wow.
Building into the story. And then the Stasi, the secret police. So much was real, but I needed to fictionalize it to get that story out there. So, that came together, and I published that in October to mark the 60th anniversary last year. And so in between time, I'd had another fiction book, which was Kaikoura Rendezvous, which is sort of, again, taking a long journey. Now, that was based upon Cyclone Gita, which struck New Zealand in 2018. And we were driving the motorhome around New Zealand at that point, and we were south of Kaikoura thinking, yep, we're going to be safe. We're going to get away from this cyclone. When it broke down, literally, warning transmission light came on the motorhome, pull over. So we did. It shut down. The cyclone was a day behind us. We got stuck there for 12 days. The whole hillside came down around us. Literally, there were 70 landslips, which at the time, I thought, oh, okay, yep. We were safe. I never thought much of it. We took photos and we had an adventure. My wife built a whale watch stone shelter on the beach because there was no one else around. There's nothing to do, and we just sort of filled it in. But then in 2019 at Rotorua Noir, all these international authors came. It was the first crime fiction seminar in New Zealand. And they came and said, you have a beautiful country, a fantastic landscape that lends itself to, dramatic and thriller stories. I said, use that. Build on what's in your backyard, because so many authors are told, don't write about New Zealand or Australia. International market doesn't want that. And here we had international authors saying, no, the world is ready for it. So from that, literally in the middle of that Rotorua Noir, the idea came. And I built the story from that. And you mentioned a body, finding a body. That became the current book I'm working on for Amy. In 1986, I was doing a narrowboat tour of England, the Oxford Canal, with some friends. Had a very heavy night in Oxford, all a bit seedy. We got a very loud knock on the door the next morning. There was a policeman standing there saying, do you know anything about the body in the canal behind your boat? Whoops, head count.
Yeah.
So we called off. Everyone was there. And no, someone had fallen in, and we felt terrible. We didn't know whether the body, someone had been drunk or someone had a seizure or a heart attack or something. Had they been out there, we hadn't heard anything. So, that sort of literally festered for 30-odd years until the story sort of came, I can build that into a story, which I have with the fourth book in that Spotlight Mystery series. So, yes, all the books literally have a personal connection somewhere along the way.
That is so fascinating. So does your writing process differ for each book, or is it kind of similar? Like, are there any books that you plot out? Because I know Peace Stick sounds like it was quite different than Tugger's Mob, whereas Tugger's Mob was more of that inspired on the spot and getting words on paper, whereas Peace Stick, you were kind of researching through your sister's friend and that. So are they different, your process for writing each, or... Yeah.
Yes, I suppose they've evolved to become, a little bit more professional. Tugger's Mob was, I've got this idea, I've got these words, I'll just write it. And I wasn't writing every day because, be travelling or I was a little bit tired at night. And other times think, this is a quiet campsite. I'm feeling the inspiration, so I would do it. I was trying to plan out ahead, but I got to the end and I wasn't satisfied with the ending of it. But that came with the editor, and she suggested a really powerful ending. And it was staring me in the face the whole book. I just didn't know it. And the interesting thing was the ending comes, I don't think it's too much of a spoiler, where a parent is named at the very end of the book. And it was once that idea germinated, I thought, okay, yep. And then I suddenly thought, oh, there could be two parents. And I did not know until I wrote that name which one it was going to be. And the editor didn't know. She suggested, oh, this person. And I ummed and ahed literally for a couple of days, and then I wrote it and said, that fits, that works. And now that has actually come around full circle in the fourth book, which is quite interesting. Book 2 was also written very much on the road in New Zealand, and we hadn't bought another house again. So we were literally living with family members in spare rooms, studio flats. We were trying to move to the Bay of Plenty. And so I was standing there in the motorhome looking for houses during the week while my wife was working. And she would come down on the weekend and say, no, useless, no, keep searching. So I would look at houses and write. So it was, again, the same process, but I had an idea of where that story was going from start to finish. Although I will say it revolves around three women, three strong women, an idealistic journalist, a betrayed lover, and a woman who's been held captive. Now, that woman who was being held captive was dead for most of the book until I suddenly said, no, you idiot. She's more powerful in this role. And again, second book, a little bit more confidence seeping and thinking, yes, you can do that. You don't have to be fixed with how you're going to do things. So I was thinking of myself as a plotter, but very, very flexible, very fluid. With Peace Stick, yes, that I had a week in history to capture, but I also had to make it interesting and exciting. Literally, the kids were going to school. Initially, I was thinking, oh, I can chuck a couple of murders in there, no problems. And in between this, it's all set against the tension of the Cuban Missile Crisis. But then I realized, no, this is a story of hope, innocence, the will to survive. And I had to sort of restrain the criminal and writer within me. And I found the research process in that absolutely brilliant, absolutely exciting. Talking to Ulrika, getting her family photos, going online, going to the library, getting so many books. I couldn't go to Germany because it was during COVID. So I had to rely upon Google Earth for maps, but also Erfurt is such a famous town that so many people did video walkthroughs. So literally they were doing what I was going to be doing. And so they'd be walking along across the Kramerbrücke, which is this 15th century bridge with half-timbered houses, shops below, apartments above, a 5-metre wide street, cobblestones. That's just beautiful. Everything you sort of imagine medieval Germany will be. And as walking down there, suddenly someone turns to the left and there's this little narrow passage that goes down to the river. Yes, one of my characters is going to slip away through there. The Stasi is chasing him and he's going to go along there and get away from them. So it was as good as being there. And also delving into the research, I was actually able to tell Ulrika more of her family history than she understood. Her father served in the Navy during the Second World War, and she thought he served on a minesweeper because he said the vessel had to move one night. It moved, the ship, the replacement, was bombed and destroyed and everyone died. And I tracked that down and worked out, no, he was actually on a full World War I battleship, which was turned into a training ship, which probably kept him out of a lot of the trouble. So she was quite fascinated to learn about that family history and so much more. So yeah, that was a really exciting project to research, and I just kept going and thought, hang on, I've got to write this. I've got a deadline. It's got to be out and printed by October. And so with the current book, it starts in Australia. It, as I said, goes full circle to Tugger's Mob. Something happened at the end of Tugger that brings one of the characters back as a target for a killer. And I started writing that just before Peace Stick last year. And then I've been sort of caught up trying to promote that and move that in bookshops and so forth. And then I thought, well, I'm going to promote books in Australia this year because Kaikoura Rendezvous was supposed to have been released in April. I'm still waiting. And so I was going to go to England after that and go back to Oxford and again do a bit more research where the canal boat trip was. And so things got put off a bit, put off. And then suddenly I'm not going to get to England this year. So I just went on Google again. And luckily Google Earth, because they love the canal so much, all the guys with their cameras mounted were walking along the canal paths, past all the boats and the pubs and the houses, everything that I would have been doing myself. So literally in July, I said, right, get this finished. And I said 1,000 words a day. And I wrote 40,000 words in July.
Amazing.
For me, it was just that stream of consciousness. It just flowed and flowed. And now I have to go back and say, okay, how much do I have to throw out? But I completed the story, and I'm happy with that. And now it's the editing, the refining, the improving, and that's where I enjoy having that editor. Well, to a certain degree, the editor coming in and saying, you can improve on this, or your grammar is bad here, or your passive sentencing here. You tear your hair out. What I do is I go for a walk, storm around for an hour, come back. Yes, okay, you're right. Yes, I'll take all those changes. I learned very early on that editors have mystical powers.
Yes, they do.
That goes back to editing Tugger's Mob. We were in Wales at the time, and we were down on a windy, rough coast at St. David's, and more edits come through, a couple of chapters at a time. And I opened them up, and my wife said, oh, for goodness sakes, go for a walk, just walk along the cliff. I'll go this way, come back when you calm down. So I went off and walked and agreed, yes, Ruth is right yet again. So I came back, my wife hadn't returned. Our motorhome had a very big garage. You could fit 4 bikes in there. It was quite massive if you wanted. We're kayakers, and so we had paddles and other things in there. And I wanted to get in to get something. And it was right in the middle of the motorhome, and the wind blew the door shut. So I'm stuck inside this motorhome. My wife's nowhere nearby. It's the end of the season, October, no one else in the campsite. So I'm sitting there wanting to get out, couldn't do that. Like it was only about 15 minutes, but for that stage, I sort of calmed down and admitted, yes, okay, just let me get back to the computer and do the rewrites. And then Kath came back and she's tromping around upstairs and said, hello, let me out. So she's opening all the cupboards. I said, where the hell are you? And then I think she debated for a while whether to leave me for another hour. And then when I told the editor, she said, yes, just always listen to us. We do have strange and wonderful powers.
They do. I wouldn't have any books published without my editor. Oh my gosh, she is just a godsend. She absolutely is. So you have done some really interesting things where you have jumped genres a little bit. So you've done the crime and thriller, and then you've got your novel Peace Stick, which is more historical fiction. And you've also had your books published both traditionally and independently as well. So can you talk a little bit about kind of the mindset that goes behind jumping genres and also publishing differently?
There's a journalist in me that recognised Peace Stick. It's just a fascinating story. I could have written that as a newspaper article for any of the newspapers in New Zealand, or I did a rat descended around the world and made a little bit of money from it. But I thought, no, that is a much more fascinating story, and exploring life behind the Iron Curtain that Ulrich is saying, no, it was a fascinating and enjoyable childhood. And they didn't, even now, there's a huge nostalgic feeling among former East Germans for that time. They would quite happily go back to that lifestyle. The Berlin Wall didn't exactly sort of enhance their lives. So I just felt that story deserves to be shared. And that's why I pressed on with that. And I did present it to my traditional publisher, and she said, yep, I love the story, but it's not really my market. Her focus is Australian authors and stories. And I said, no, that's fine. I'm going to do it out there. So I loved the fact that a traditional publisher took my first couple of books and has my third book and will take the fourth, because I can write them, get them edited, to say, right, over to you, Lindy, tell me where I need to turn up to talk, do radio interviews, do that sort of stuff. I love that, meeting people, talking about books. With P-Stick, I had to learn the process of self-publishing, indie publishing, and it was daunting. It still is scary. I haven't done it probably as well as I could, and I'm actually going to a seminar this afternoon to learn to do more, because I want to do it with this other crime fiction book that traditional publishers are saying, we don't know whether this will be too confronting for some people, the subject matter, that the Me Too movement may sort of come down upon us, because it's dealing with the issue of submission. And that is a real eye-popping experience for people. So coming to this very late, I suppose I have a bit more, I wouldn't say bravery, but I don't have to worry so much. The story is what motivates me. I'm a storyteller. I want to get it out there. I will do what I have to get it out there. If a publisher takes it, that is great for me, because it saves a lot of the time and work for me. I can just move on to the next project, because literally I've got another dozen books there that are just waiting to be written, that I just need to find the time. So I'd rather say, here's a book, please get it onto the bookshelves, let me move on to the next subject. As far as crossing genre, I was asked last year, are you planning another historic fiction novel? And I said, not really, but I did have an idea at the back of my mind, but it's more a novella. And after that, I literally, within a couple of days, this one novella and another novella, and they're both involving history. One involved Gallipoli, one involved the Melbourne Cup. And I worked out a way. Oh, yes, I can make this work. I can really make this work. It might be another 2 years before I get to that. But as the ideas come to me, I just go back into the laptop. I have the files. I just keep updating them, refreshing them. I do a lot of walking. I do a lot of kayaking. And that's where my thinking comes from. When I walk, I carry a notebook. I'm a bit of a Luddite. I'm a boomer technophone. I have a phone, but I answer, I talk, I text. That's about as much as I do. I'd rather write my notes, come back, transcribe them into the computer, and just store it. And then I might say, okay, I've got another idea for this one and this one and this one. So I might spend a couple of days just going back and fleshing different stories, and then coming back to the work in progress. And that has sort of motivated and inspired me to continue with the next work. So I don't see it as a distraction. I'm not scared to cross genres. And this other book that will come out next year, I'm not scared to tackle tough subjects, which again surprises me, because, as I say, imposter syndrome creeps up so frequently. I think there should be almost imposter syndrome anonymous, that we can go to little meetings and say, please, my name's Stephen Johnson. It's been 10 days since I had an attack of imposter syndrome. Please, sort of just boost me up and get me back out there again. But I've started this very late in my life, I suppose, and I'm just eager to get as many stories out there as possible. My publisher says, well, you take the books I like, you write the books you want to, and that's a good arrangement.
I think that is just so exciting, that having that freedom to just follow your passion, write the stories that inspire you and appeal to you, and then throw them out there to be published traditionally. And if not, then going the indie route. I think that's just, that's a cool mindset. That I really, really love. I think that's fantastic. So what then for yourself have you found is the most challenging aspect of either the writing or the publishing process?
I suppose getting your books. Well, I was lucky with Clandestine Press that I had to contact, that I was able to send it to the publisher who, we used to work together on the same newspaper many years ago. We shared a flat together in Melbourne. I was the world's worst flatmate. I couldn't cook. Didn't clean. Absolutely useless and lazy until I got housebroken by my New Zealand wife. And 30 years later, Lindy and I said, I thought, you had forgiven me? Yeah, of course. But she saw the story. She saw the potential straight away. Now, getting publishers to read that, to see that, there's so many. We know They've been bombarded with manuscripts daily. Everyone believes that they have the bestseller there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's getting it read, getting them beyond that first page, getting beyond the first 3 chapters sometimes, because we know they can always be rewritten. They can always be changed. It's getting them to see the potential. That's the frustrating part, I think, in that process. But the beauty of Amazon and all these other formats now, that we can get our books out there. Until ebooks and Amazon and came along, and Barnes and Noble and Kobo and Toleno. I've got a German company there that does the ebook. Until they came along, they'd be still sitting on our laptops. These stories would not be read apart from family and friends who say, "Oh, we think it's really great." It is good, but you're not a publisher. So that's a frustrating process. I'm lucky I have a traditional publisher at the moment, but I'm only as good as the last book. She loves the book, Kaikoura Rendezvous, which is great. Yep, it's magnificent. We're going to get it out there. I've got to keep the quality up for Amy, which I think it has. I think it's there, and I think the others are there. So you need that touch of self-confidence to keep pressing through. And if they say, no, it's not going to work for us, well, I still think it's a good story. I'll go the indie process. And there are readers out there. There are so many books that bypass traditional publishers, and the public loved them and said, yep, give us more of this, please.
Yeah. 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 Now, being in a small country like New Zealand, what are you doing to market your books? So how are you going about marketing your books or getting them out there into the hands of readers?
It's a tricky process because clandestine press is Australia. So for me to get them here, it's expensive. And the publisher wasn't that interested in New Zealand. So I would buy the books from her and get them here. I didn't go down the bookshops because I would have to sell them for so much just to even make that $1 for myself. It was just too expensive. So it was sort of promotion, radio, podcasts, etc., meeting people, going to book events, Hamilton Book Month, that sort of thing, and trying to get as much of that process as possible. With Peace Stick, I got into the bookshops. I got into independent bookshops. I got into Paper Plus. That's been a slow burner. It's not a topic that a lot of New Zealanders were aware of. And I still think it's a great story because it deals with 2 young women, just wanting an everyday existence that we can enjoy now. We've got the war going on in Ukraine, Russia, potentially, if one of them goes nuclear. We're in that situation we were in 1962. So I thought the story might have resonated a bit more with people here, but it has more of a resonance in Europe and elsewhere because they're confronted with that nuclear reality much more than New Zealand. So a lot of that is online. So, but as I say, I'm going to a seminar after we finish here. I'm going to learn more and better ways to be able to market myself. But I love going out and talking books. I do a lot of library visits and different events. That's the fun part. Talking to you now, absolutely love this. Time flies by. My family roll their eyes and said, "Oh God, Dad's talking about the bloody books again." But that's what the passion that brings all of us together, the people to your podcast that want to hear about books.
Yeah.
And also that writers feel passionate about our stories. When I was on holiday in Samoa and different people coming up and saying, well, how do you write? I've always dreamed about writing. How do you do it? And I said, you just have to sit down. You have to put the words down and you have to believe in yourself. I'm a plotter, but I'm flexible. A lot of other people are pantsers. They think, oh, here's an idea, just go from there. I need to have an idea of structure. It's my television producer background. I need to know where the production is going from start to finish. It doesn't mean that, say the killer I have at the start of the story or the plot, whatever is going to end up at the end, but I have an idea how things are going to work out. And I love having that flexibility within myself. Oh, yes, this works better. And as I said, I played Lazarus in Box tonight. I brought a character back to life because it was much, much better for the story. And when people finish reading it, they say, oh, I can tell you this now.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. So what then would be your advice for somebody, because you've talked a little bit about when people ask you, how to go about even writing a book. But if somebody's on the fence and they've got that idea and they're just giving themselves every excuse under the sun why they couldn't possibly write a book, what would you say to them?
Sit down, write, just write, keep writing. You don't have to show anyone. That's
Yeah.
the beauty of it. You can just keep writing until you think, yes, this is forming something that I like, or this is something interesting, or no, delete, delete, delete. You can sometimes go back to delete whole pages, whatever, or else you just put it aside, or you find that trusted confidant and you say, look, I'm bouncing this around. The other thing is I'm a member of the Auckland Crime Writers Group, and we meet for coffee once a month, and we have other events and that. And there are a lot of indie and traditional published authors in there. And we all, again, have that imposter syndrome. We come along and say, what are you working on? Oh, I haven't been working hard enough, haven't been doing this and that. But it's mutually supportive. And at times I'll say to people, if crime fiction is your genre of interest, come along to one of our monthly Monday meetings. Meet the people. We're just ordinary people like everyone else. Same insecurities, same doubts, that sort of thing. We support each other, encourage each other, and you'll know the processes we're going through, and you can raise ideas, and we can sort of help give you that encouragement. So it is a lonely process, but you don't have to be alone in doing it. So there are writing groups. There's a group that used to be the St Heliers Library every Saturday morning. They would go and write and present their latest manuscript or just bounce off each other. The library's just undergone a renovation, so I hope they've gone back to their meetings. So, yeah, reach out to one of those groups and just keep adding to your thoughts and do like I do. Go for a walk, come back, just let that idea. I come back with a notebook, pages and pages of it. And particularly if I reach, I would say in the impasse, but I'm a bit tired. Yep, a walk will just clear the head a little bit. And I come back just chomping at the bit to get back into the story. And these days, I suppose I've come back into more structured life that, we have a family home again. My wife goes off to work, support me. I do the domestics. So tidy the house, do the washing, make sure we've got shopping, do my walk, do all the emails, read the news. By late morning, I'm ready to get into the manuscript or into the editing, get myself some lunch. A lot of the time, I think, what did I just have for lunch? I don't know, but you're just doing this and the story, so you're focused on that. And then my wife might come home about 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, if I haven't gone downstairs to start preparing my food bag, sort of a little thumb, hey, where's the domestic guy to cook dinner? And then we'll sort of have the evening together. If I'm really, really right into the story or a particular point, I've just got to keep going. I'll come back up after dinner and do a bit more. But most of the time, I'm sort of late morning, early afternoon, because there's no one else in the house. Now, that's not possible. Everyone has families. They might have children, that sort of thing. Find the time that works for you. I'm a late night now. I'll be up reading or watching a documentary or something. But I've found my happy space where I can write, where I can read, I can walk, my life's in a good position for a fledgling writer. Maybe sometimes that, I wouldn't say instability, but that daily activity can incentivize you to find the time, or I've got to get this out now. And I know some women do, though. Okay, the kids are around home doing the homework. I've got an hour, and I'll just bash out a few things on the laptop. So it's finding the time when you can put the ideas down. Don't be scared to put them down. No one, needs to read them until you're happy.
Yeah, I think that's really wonderful advice, because I think we do get stuck in our own minds of it's not good enough or anything like that. And if we can push all that aside and just get those words down on paper and know that we're in control of others reading it or not reading it, and then we can make that choice later on. But yeah, I think that's really, really sound advice. Cool. So how can people connect with you then, and where can they find your books?
clandestinepress.net is the traditional publisher for my Spotlight Mystery series. Peace Stick is available on Amazon and certain Paper Plus stores. So if you go to Paper Plus store in New Zealand, you can ask for that, or it's on Tolino, Barnes & Noble, that's online sites. And of course, the Spotlight Mystery series are also on Amazon and Booktopia, etc. And I have an author website, stephenjohnsonauthor.com. So hopefully from this afternoon, I'll be getting more motivated to just giving more of a writer-author experience for people coming to that website. And there are links to where you can buy the books on there. And the new book coming out very soon, Kaikoura Rendezvous, which is, as I said about Cyclone Gita. And again, that is my Spotlight Mystery group. The story there is that the cyclone is coming to New Zealand. I've got a down-on-his-luck fisherman in Kaikoura who's been offered the deal of a lifetime if he's prepared to go out to sea to pick up something, no questions asked. And I've got my characters from Boxed. One who's suffering post-traumatic stress, another who is carrying very heavy emotional baggage of an incident that happened in New Zealand a couple of years earlier, and they're all converging on Kaikoura. And everything is going to arrive at the same time as the cyclone. And my publisher said the other day, my goodness, that is an explosive little climax in a very awful little house. And he said, yep, that's what was all coming about. So that one will be with Clandestine Press very soon.
Oh, that's exciting. Those stories sound absolutely amazing. So I'll make sure that all those links are in the show notes too, so that people can check them out and go visit your website and everything like that. That's really, really exciting. Well, thank you so much, Stephen, for being on the show. It's been such a blast chatting with you.
Thank you very much, Joe. It's been a pleasure talking to you and talking books. It's been great.
Takeaways from today's show. 1. Spend time observing people and looking for those interesting points of difference that can fuel story or character ideas. 2. If you are a New Zealand author, know that the world is ready for stories set in New Zealand, despite what naysayers may say. 3. Even if you've plotted a book, be flexible in allowing it to change shape as you write it. 4. Tools like Google Earth and YouTube tours can be useful for researching settings if you can't physically visit a place. 5. If a story speaks to you and you want to get it out in the world, do what it takes to make that happen, whether it's by traditionally or independently publishing it. 6. Move through imposter syndrome to write the story that speaks to you. Don't let imposter syndrome or tough subject matter hold you back. 7. Stephen's advice for writing a book is to sit down, put the words down, and believe in yourself. 8. Consider joining a writing group to be around other like-minded people and to support and be supported and grow your author network. 9. If you're feeling stuck with your story, go for a walk and sit with your story. So I hope you enjoyed my chat with Stephen today. He was so very generous in sending me a copy of Kaikoura Rendezvous, which I cannot wait to dive into once my book deadline is out of the way. It is top of my reading pile and a big incentive to get my book written. If you're near Auckland in New Zealand, Stephen is having a book launch for Kaikoura Rendezvous on November 12th at 2 p.m. at St. Chad's Community Centre in Meadowbank, if you want to support him and grab yourself a copy. Otherwise, all the links to purchase his books are in the show notes. As always, if you've enjoyed the show, please consider supporting it by leaving a rating or review, or by buying me a coffee at www.buymeacoffee.com/Joe Buer. Your support helps me keep this show going and just means so much to me. Right, well, I will leave off with wishing you a wonderful writing week ahead, my friend. Bye for now.